Hello, good people. It is Todd Shannon, data scientist, social commentator, getter of buckets. And we, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we're going to have to talk about Candace Owens again. Now, I want to just explain to you why so much Candace content. One is because it's obviously popular. I get a lot more engagement from you all whenever I do Candace content, so I do appreciate that. So I, as a smaller creator, I do have to do what, in a lot of ways, my audience is interested in hearing about. So as my channel grows, I'll have a little bit more freedom in that. That's just letting you behind the curtain just a little bit. But more importantly, there is still a lot to be learned from Candace Owens and the phenomenon of Candace. And if we believe that God is sovereign, and I certainly do, and if you're a Christ follower, you certainly probably believe that God has raised Candace up for a reason. And the question is, what should we learn? Why has she become such a spectacle for us to observe? And we should learn something from this situation. And speaking of learning, this is what I believe, or what I try to provide as my principal value proposition for this channel. A lot of people are saying Candace is cuckoo, the conspiracy theories are weird. Okay, everyone sees that. That's fine. What I hope you learn when you click on my face, when you click on my videos, I hope you learn something that you did not see on your own, something that maybe it wasn't obvious or something that you may have overlooked. So with that being said, I want to talk about something that maybe you haven't thought of. And this Candace Owens situation reminds me of a very, very prominent Bible story, and that is Solomon. When he first became the king in Israel, he had a situation where two women came to him, and they had a dispute over a baby. This story. It's actually very popular. Even people who are not Christians, not Christ followers, know about this story. I've seen it parodied in cartoons and everything. So very popular story. But the problem is when stories become this popular, they often lose their meaning. They become kind of cliche, and you forget the profound lesson to be learned from it. Almost like the song Amazing Grace. We sing that song. It's become kind of a part of popular culture, but the deep theological truths in the lyrics of that song are almost overlooked as it just becomes like a big wall of melodies. Oh, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. You have to let the words penetrate your heart to understand what's being said there. And the same thing is true about this situation with Solomon. Now, we all know the story. Two women fighting over a baby. One of the women rolled over and smothered her child. The child died. And so she stole the woman's child who was next to her, took the live baby, and then took her dead baby and gave the dead baby to the woman she stole the baby from. Now, the dispute was, whose baby is it? And Solomon did the now famous or infamous, depending on how you look at it, the now infamous test where he said, well, bring me a sword and I'll chop the baby in half and we'll give half to you and half to you. Of course, the woman who the baby belonged to said, no, please don't hurt the child. She can have her. And the woman who was lying, who was trying to steal the baby, said, yes, that sounds like a good, let's go ahead and do that. And obviously, we know the outcome. It seems obvious to us, but I can guarantee you, no one would have thought about that or thought about doing that in that same situation, except for someone who was supremely wise. And what he did, obviously, was present a situation that forced the true motives of the women to rise to the surface. Because any mother who loves their child, under no circumstance, even if it means that they would lose the child, would allow their child to be harmed. That's what he understood. But he had to have a way to cause that to bubble to the surface. Well, the death of Charlie Kirk has caused a similar effect on our culture, on the right in general. And I'll do maybe another video on maybe a deeper dive into this concept, but I want to focus on Candace today, just as I think a concrete example. Because what has happened is there's kind of a tug of war on the right. And Turning Point USA is at the center of it. And you can almost think of it like the fellowship is breaking, right? Like the Lord of the Rings. I love Lord of the Rings analogies. The fellowship is breaking. And the question is, who's going to be the one, which faction is going to be the one that rightfully lays hold to conservatism moving forward with Turning Point USA as kind of a metaphorical football? Who's going to come up with the ball? Now, Candace Owens is doing something very interesting. Candace Owens is saying that she and Charlie Kirk were best friends. That's what she's saying. She's saying how much she loved Charlie Kirk. She's saying how much she's doing for Charlie Kirk. But there's an interesting phenomenon, which is that she is quite literally and quite obviously intentionally trying to hurt Turning Point. Now, I want you to think about this. If Turning Point is Charlie's baby, right? Let's go back to the Solomon story, right? There's a baby. There's a dispute about a baby. And whose baby is it? And one woman is willing to destroy the baby if she can't have it to herself. And the other woman wants the baby to live even if she can't have it. And thus revealing the true motivation of the two women. Candace is demonstrating a similar sentiment. Candace, in many ways, if you've listened to what she said, she wants to kind of lay hold to, she wants to take ownership of Turning Point. She wants us to believe that somehow her and Charlie Kirk were kindred spirits and that they really, because they were kind of the OGs and started off, obviously Turning Point was Charlie Kirk's baby. And then he brought Candace along. And she wants you to believe that really the spirit of Turning Point is very much imbued with her essence, as it were, right? But the problem is that she's at odds with everything that Turning Point right now is publicly stating that they stand for. And moreover, everything Charlie said that he stood for publicly. I know she wants to try to claim that there's this massive transformation under the hood, but Charlie never said those things publicly, so she's just going to have to deal with that fact. That's just a fact. But notice what she's doing. She's trying to destroy it. And I think she knows that she can never go back because of what she's doing, because she's making all these accusations. They're never going to invite her to be at the helm of Turning Point USA or to be, on tour at Turning Point USA events. She knows. I think she wants it. She wants it back. She wants to claim it, but she can't do that. And so what she is willing to accept as a consolation prize its total destruction. She's happy to split it if she can't have it to herself. And that tells you that it doesn't belong to her. I've got proof here. I want to show you this. I want to show you this conversation or this content that Candace was talking about on her show just yesterday, where she's saying that there's snakes at Turning Point. She's saying all of these things about the financials. I won't put words in her mouth. I'll let you hear what she has to say.
That Turning Point USA actually decreased their staff, the 501c3 arm, 33% by 33%. So there was a 33% staff reduction. And yet the cost of salaries somehow went up. And to him, that looks suspicious. And I agree, that looks suspicious, right? And this, of course, is the kind of pressure that needs to be put on them. Yes, I said it was a very bad idea right off the bat for Erica, who's grieving her husband, to then instantly become a chairman and the CEO, because these are valid questions now that people are asking. And a chairman and a CEO is going to have to respond to those questions. You have to answer these questions when people are asking about money, especially given the fact that so many people, they cleared over $70 million in the first couple of weeks after Charlie was assassinated. Okay, that's a lot of well-meaning people that are giving money to this organization who are now learning how this organization functions by routing the bulk of their money, or to a lot of their money rather, not the bulk of it, into their endowment fund, right? That is not okay. We deserve answers to the questions that we are asking, and we're going to keep asking them. Okay. We're going to keep asking them because I know there are snakes at Turning Point USA. And I'm going to reveal more to you guys tomorrow. First, we'll take a quick break.
So, there are snakes at Turning Point. I don't know how much clearer she can make it that she is nothing but hostile to Turning Point. She wants to see nothing but the complete and utter demise of Turning Point. Of course, I am 100% convinced that this is her consolation prize. This is not the first thing she wants. She would rather have the baby to herself. She knows that that's not going to happen. And so, because she can't have it for herself, because she can't claim it, because she can't claim that it's her and Charlie's baby, and that, even that little, collection of words is fraught with all kinds of double meaning, if you know what I'm saying. Because I think that there's a good possibility that Candace Owens really wanted to be with Charlie Kirk. I think she wanted to be Erica Kirk. That is not a fact. That's just my speculation. I'm making that clear. I'm not doing the cuckoo Candace thing. I'm not saying that I don't know, but I know. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying the vibes that she gives off, again, at the risk of sounding like Candace, it doesn't make any sense why she wants to see its destruction. She comes off as jealous. But that's another topic for another day. She can't have it, so she wants it destroyed. This is how we know that there is nothing but malice and blackness in her heart. This is how the Word of God sets things up and frames us and allows us to abstract that, the meaning and the essence of that story, removing the details and generalize it so that you can understand as a general rule, people who want to see things destroyed if they can't control it are controlled by a thieving, deceitful, lying spirit. Now, I want to show you a contrast because this is so interesting because Tim Pool, if you know who Tim Pool is, I like Tim Pool. Tim Pool has been a voice of reason in this era of wokeness and madness. And he's not actually a conservative. He's just kind of a common sense guy. And he is very much on the side of conservatism. And Charlie considered Tim Pool an important voice. Tim Pool had done AmericaFest or AmFest, AmericaFest. I don't know if they say AmFest or AmericaFest for the last 3 years at Charlie's behest. And Tim Pool was excited to work with Charlie, and he was excited to do AmFest, and he thought he was going to be a part of it again. But he was recently notified that he would not be invited back because of some comments he made that he says higher ups, and I don't know who that means, but higher ups at Turning Point did not appreciate. They found it hurtful. But I want you to contrast Candace Owens with Tim Pool, and I want you to show you what a real friend looks like. This is when somebody respects you, even though they don't get what they want. This is they do not participate in the destruction of the thing just because they can't control it or just because they don't get their way. And from what I understand, if this is this video that Tim Pool is talking, it's about 38 minutes long. I've watched most of it. It almost sounds to me like he has good reason to feel slighted that he's not being invited back based on what I've seen. But let's contrast his reaction versus Candace Owens because I think it's instructive.
So there are many individuals who have spoken with me and said, Tim, please just say nothing and keep doing your thing. There have been individuals who said, we will intervene on your behalf and make them invite you. And my answer is, that's never been me. I'm not one to play those games. I want Turning Point to succeed, and I have no doubt this year will be the biggest and the best. And if I'm not invited because of how leadership views things, then, hey, look, man, as I've always said, I really have no problem living in a van down by the river. We'll make it work. I do my thing, I do what I do, and that's it. I feel like the movement is breaking apart because we've won largely. So it's not really bad news, but there is something to pay attention to.
Very interesting. Notice he said very explicitly, I want Turning Point to succeed. He actually addressed in this video, without saying her name, the Candace conspiracies. He says he doesn't believe that. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any logical sense. He made the obvious common sense point that with Charlie Kirk at the helm, really, there are concerns that now that he's not at the helm, that the future of Turning Point is very much in question. And I have to say, I agree with that. It isn't clear to me how Turning Point is really going to survive without the brilliance of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was one of one. And I love Erica. I mean, she seems like a lovely lady. I say I love her. I don't know her. She seems like a lovely lady, but she's not Charlie Kirk. And what we saw was that Charlie Kirk was holding all of these disparate groups together by by almost magic, by the sheer, immense personality and the brilliance that he had to maneuver politically. And now that he's not going to be there, there's a question about whether or not they can survive. But he talked about the fracturing of the right. And he talked about how it's going to be really difficult moving forward to figure out how there's going to be unity again. And all of those things are valid. All of those things are very valid. But despite that, he wants Turning Point to succeed. And when we see Candace in the absolute opposite posture, we know that there's not a nickel's worth of difference between her and the woman that stood before Solomon thousands of years ago, trying to steal another woman's baby and consenting to its destruction because she couldn't have it. And there we see the wisdom of the scriptures and how it makes us wise. My friends, we have to have discernment, and it's important that you actually know the Bible, that you know it for yourself, and that when you see these situations, you be able to apply these principles to your general situation. So I hope you will continue to tune in to Toddcast because Todd thinks. Way back in the day, I used to do some stuff on Facebook, and I used to call my little talks a Toddcast, kind of like a podcast. You get it? But play on words. So I hope you tune in to Todd Thinks, because this is the value proposition. This is what we'll be doing more of here, helping you see and understand how to discern, how to take biblical principles and apply it and overlay it over over modern real-time events. And hopefully you won't lose heart. You'll be encouraged by it and you'll be enlightened. So if this is your first time stopping by, I appreciate you doing that. Let me know what you think. Please like, share, and subscribe. If that hype button shows up on this video, that's a new feature on YouTube. Apparently, if you hype this video up, it pushes it out to more people. I don't know exactly what it does, but apparently it's like some sort of super like. But I would appreciate you if you did that. And until next time, my friends, God bless you.